Hey everyone, as I record this, I'm thinking that my XCOM 2 campaign is probably dead. There's a good chance that the thing that looks and feels like a mod conflict in my game that I can't seem to find through troubleshooting and binary searching is a result of mod changes over the course of a campaign, slowly accruing in a way that kills the campaign. This is a thing where I have no technical reason to believe it exists, but it's also a thing that I and several other people have experienced where doing this over the course of a campaign tends to fuck things up. And it looks like something may have reached critical mass and caused my campaign to fall apart in the very late game of it. So as I record this, I'm thinking the campaign is dead. If that's not the case, I will have a community post up when this goes live already being like, hey, the campaign's not dead. However, as the campaign does appear to be dead, I figure I would talk about mod changes going into the next campaign now, because I always plan to have a video talking about which mods I'm going to remove and which mods I'm going to add in my next campaign, whenever this one eventually wrapped up. And I have one change that I never expected I would have had. In my next campaign, I'm almost certainly going to remove Covert Infiltration. I personally love the mod. I really like that it extends the length of the campaign. I like all the strategic depth that it adds. And also, I don't like being locked down to the same campaign for like 3 months of videos, especially when as the campaign goes on, we might get further and further into a campaign that can't be concluded because of problems involving in modding. I feel safer having shorter campaigns as a modder, and as a content creator, I don't want to be locked into the same project for 3 continuous months. So even though I love everything about Covert Infiltration, the sheer length of it on Legend is just too much for me as a content creator and as someone who's constantly fucking with mods trying to better at the setup. I love the mod to death, but I won't be playing with it in my next campaign. Speaking of, I will not be playing with the Lost in my next campaign. There are ways you can make the Lost more threatening. You can remove the headshot mechanic. There's a really cool mod that reskins the Lost to be the Flood from Halo, which, like, sure, it doesn't make much lore sense, but don't lie to me and tell me the Lost make much lore sense either. And the reskin for the Flood actually includes a bunch of new unit types that make them on the whole much scarier, at least so I've heard. However, the problem with the Lost is never going to change. If they're on the mission, they make the mission easier, no matter how hard they are, because it means Advent isn't there and shooting at you. Or if they are there, then they're shooting at the Lost too, and they're helping you out. Additionally, it just kills the performance on every mission with the Lost, because there are so many enemies, and it drags down the game, because you have to kill all the Lost, watch them spawn, and kill them again, over and over and over again. It's just a hassle. So I'll be playing without the Lost in my next campaign for sure. And I'll also be playing without Proficiency laser sparks. I love the design of them in general, but my experience has definitely been that throughout the campaign, Infiltrators are just an absolutely top tier unit, and they power spike so hard at Sergeant, which is, in my opinion, the hardest part of the game, where you can stabilize and get a snowball going, or the game can fall apart. Getting Bombard Protocol at Sergeant, especially for the Infiltrator, is insane. Even in the late game, that ability is still great. It's just much higher utility, much less damage. And Pioneers have always been invaluable. In the early game, you can't kill reliably, so you need the tank, and by the time you get to the late game, they start just doing disgusting things with kinetic strike modules, even with my nerfs. And by the way, I've got like 4 separate nerfs for Pioneers, which is a good sign the mod has balance issues. I don't play with the last Proficiency Spark. I personally find them very clunky due to their 2-action to shoot 1-bullet gun. It applies a lot of roster pressure, and we're not going to get into it. I might make a tier list about all the Proficiency classes I played with and talk about it in that. That sounds fun. But for now, suffice it to say, I find them to be too powerful if I'm playing with Proficiency classes, which I intend to do, so I won't be playing with Proficiency laser sparks. Now, since I'm not playing with Covert Infiltration and roster pressure is likely not going to be a mechanic in my next campaign, which is not happening immediately, I should reiterate. My next campaign is in the distant future, because I'm going to have like a good month where I do other things than XCOM at least, and where in that month, I'm going to see if I can't, have some sort of breakthrough with troubleshooting and save and resurrect this campaign, because I do want to finish it. I'm so fucking close to Waterworld. But I can't play at that FPS. I just can't. Anyways, in my next campaign, likely ignoring Sparks, but I will be running Mechatronic Warfare, because this seems to be a much more balanced and interesting version of Sparks. I'm really interested in seeing how these works, and sure, they're incongruous with Proficiency classes, but that's fine. I don't really care about that. And speaking of incongruous with Proficiency classes, there's also the Proxy and Soldier unit. This is a new hero unit. You start with it on Gatecrasher. You're going to have the ability to get a second one later in the campaign, I think. It's definitely not designed to be in line with the rest of Proficiency class pack. It's not designed for that at all. And it may be overpowered compared to what else I want to use. But also, it just seems really sick, really different design, really interested in playing with it. Ton of work in the mod, and I would love to play with it. It's relatively new. It came out in April. So I would like to play with it, see how it feels. And if it's overpowered, like, I played 80 episodes with Laser Sparks, this will be fine. It can't be worse than the Infiltrators, right? To sum up the class, though, psionic laser guns and knives, super high mobility, built-in Shredstorm cannon-esque stuff. I feel like this is just a really interesting and different class, and I'm really thrilled to try out. I find the things about this class where I don't like them to be balance concerns, which, like, that's not a reason not to have fun with it. So I absolutely want to try out the Proxy and Soldier unit. And speaking of new classes, I intend on using the Proficiency class plugin for the Phalanx. I'm going to make some edits to it because I'm not super happy with the base game Phalanx. I think they're, like, just looking at the tree, I can tell that there are things in the tree I don't like, where there are things that are missing that I want to be there. And one second. As you can see, when I looked at Phalanx in the past, I actually made notes about what maybe should be changed. So yeah, I have things where I don't like the way the mod is currently built. But I absolutely love the base idea of what the Phalanx is, and in particular, a thing I won't be playing with, I'll be using choose your own classes to remove the Assault from my game. There is a variant of the Assault that uses the ballistic shield instead of the sword. That to me sounds like a half measure. Let's just play with the Phalanx. Speaking of cut classes, I intend to remove the Combat Engineer as well. I think it's a really well-designed class. I like how strong it is in the early game, although it's a little bit too much. And I like that a strong early game character falls off in the late game. That's a good way to strike a balance. But as I'll be going down to 6-man teams, I don't want to be running a bunch of custom classes. I know I won't have time for all of them to shine. I feel like I have a pretty good grasp on the Combat Engineer. I want to try out some other things. So to me, it seems sensible to just cut the Combat Engineer for this campaign and try out a different fire-based unit. Because I need a fire-based unit. If I'm cutting Pioneers and Combat Engineers and keeping Frost Legion, which I am, then I need to have somebody with a flamethrower, right? Which brings us to the Field Alchemist. The Proficiency Field Alchemist is essentially, what if the Pioneer's gun was an entire class? Like, this is actually the same sort of resource pack that was used to build both classes. This is just the biological version. It has some of the built-in tankiness of Combat Engineers, the flamethrower focus as well. This feels like just the part of Combat Engineers that made them aggressively overpowered, the ablative health and the flamethrower, and that's like the whole class. And I'm really interested in seeing how that feels, and I need something with a flamethrower, so I'd be interested in trying this out. I'll be running Field Alchemist as well. I'll be using the Better Repeater mod. Now, in my game, this doesn't make any sense because I don't have repeaters. I'm going to be removing Weapon and Item Overhaul. Weapon and Item Overhaul is a really extensive rebalance of weapons and weapon mods, and on the whole, I like the idea of it a ton. I like the idea of bridging text to smooth the difficulty curve of the campaign. I like the idea of weapon mods not being as tremendously impactful. I like the stated intentions with the balance of weapons. I look at it, and I'm like 10 out of 10, love the mod to death, never going to run a game without it. Having played with it for 80 episodes, though, there are some things about it that are really unintuitively unpleasant for me, specifically. I really don't like the superior weapon attachments versus advanced. They're so much rarer and so marginally better. I don't get hyped for seeing superior weapon attachments, and that makes me really sad. I want to be hyped when I get a superior drop. Additionally, even though the bridging text to smooth out the balance curve sound like a really good thing, my experience has been that specifically the ballistic bridging tech is such a huge boost in power for early XCOM that smoothing out the rest of the balance curve doesn't matter because that massive bump in power, like I think almost all the deaths in my campaign, like at least 66% of them happened before ballistic bridging tech, right? That's not a coincidence. There's a huge power spike on that first bridging tech, and I don't think I like that from a balance perspective. The main things I like this for are things that could be fixed, like just removing repeaters. That's why we'll be running Better Repeater. And then there are things that I thought I really liked. This fixes cannons being objectively the best weapon, for instance. And then I realized that actually I don't care if cannons are objectively the best weapon. Like, fixing it sounded really good, but having played with it, it doesn't matter to me if one weapon's objectively the best. And it's not like the bullpup isn't still objectively the worst, because it is. So Weapon Item Overhaul, on the whole, really good mod, but specifically the lack of hype about weapon upgrades kind of bothers me. I'd rather play with the vanilla stuff again. Now, in the spirit of immediately ruining the balance, we're going to be using Iridar's Armor Overhaul. This adds a series of texts throughout the tree that just give you one additional ablative health, and the armors themselves give you very small amounts of health. Instead, you're going to be using these texts to get up to the health you're expecting, and at the very end, you'll have a little bit more health. This smooths the health you get, the curve of that over the course of a campaign, but it doesn't touch your damage output, so it'll be a lot less impactful than the ballistic bridging tech was. Additionally, I don't like that this is ablative health. I didn't run it because I think that's a problem. It means you're just not going to get wounds. Enter the new mod by Onyx Lock. It's like less than a week old. It's 2 days old as I write this, or as I record this rather. But ablative HP is just changed to actual HP with this mod. And that's solving the only problem I had with it. So hell yeah, get that in there. A mod I simply didn't know exists came out in June. It's the Full Shadow Report. It's really important. It tells you what's actually coming, like in what quantities. And I greatly appreciate that because, you know, Biozerker and Biozerker times 3 give me very different vibes about a mission, so I really like the idea of a full shadow report. And I've been on the fence about it for a while. I don't know that I'll actually be playing with this, but I'm going to try out, I think anyway, the Augmentations mod. It seems like a cool mod. It adds stuff where there's like more depth of character progression and choice, so I like that. I'm gonna give it a shot. And on the same subject, I'll be using Psionics Ex Machina 3.2. This is basically the alternative to Psi Overhaul v3. And I don't have any complaints with Psi Overhaul v3. I actually love that I had like a couple superstar characters in my campaign, like Black Cat and Big Large, where they're just absolute fucking champions because they turned out to be Scions. And this one, I believe anyone can be a Scion, though you'll have to throw them in the tank for a bit to get them graded, and you can grade them repeatedly to get them higher. I don't fully know the details of Psionics Ex Machina. I'm not going to pretend I do. But I just want to try the other system out. Although I have absolutely no complaints with Psi Overhaul v3, I figure if I'm playing another campaign, may as well try another system. And speaking of new systems, this is a mod that almost caused me to restart my campaign around episode 30. Battlefield Training came out when I was recording, and I was like, oh man, really? Because this is something you need in the start of your campaign. First, it gives you the leadership training school type of thing from Long War, which is wonderful. And then additionally, it ties it directly into game progression. I'm trying to see if it's like mentioned clearly in bullet points anywhere. I'm not going to read through this specifically to find it, but you'll find that doing things like hunting the Chosen requires you to send an officer on the mission to do it. And then to get that officer, they have to go in a certain number of missions to reach the ranks required. You have to engage in the system. There's this really cool new leader progression system that you want to have to buff up your soldiers, and it's tied into the core progression of the game for hunting the Chosen. It seems really well made and really interesting. I'm super looking forward to trying this out. Literally almost started the campaign over so that I could play with this. I'm going to be playing with Rulers Regen. I'm definitely not going to let it regen their armor. I don't know how much health I'll have it regen. But while I think the base regen value, which I think is 33% in all of their armor, is fucking nuts, I do think that regenerating some of their health absolutely would be appropriate, because I was a little bit underwhelmed with how long some of the rulers lasted. Definitely some of them, like the first rounds with the Viper King, were terrifying. But on the whole, I think a little bit of rulers regen is a good thing, so I'll have some configs for it, tone it down a little bit from its base settings, and be playing with this. On the subject of customizing soldiers and just liking having more depth there, Soldier Conditioning is a really cool mod. Essentially, it just gives you a thing where you can boost your soldier stats once in their life to make them better at something. You have to choose who's going on it. You have to choose what stat they're getting. It's not a huge deal. It is probably power creep on the whole because it is just a new slot in the training center. Is there any downside to this at all? It'll drain their will. There's a reason not to do it. Absolutely, that matters. So, yes, I love the idea of this. I want to use this. It just seems like a cool thing to add to the game. No problems with it whatsoever. Which brings us to the skeleton alien. You might be wondering, like, oh, that's a weird alien to add. Most of the aliens you add are, like, really directly in line with what's already in the game, right? Like, sure, Frost Legion and Biodivision are a little bit asynchronous with the rest of the game, and the Hive is a little bit asynchronous. Those are massive overhauls doing their own thing a bit. But this is just like a standalone alien that's pretty weird, and sure, it was in the original XCOM, but it looks really out of place, doesn't it? And the answer is that I need to nerf Mimic Beacons, right? Because it's been fun having Reapers with the tactical rigging carrying 4 Mimic Beacons, but like, it's kind of broken. And I'm going to use some I changes here. I don't like reducing its health to 1, so it always dies in 1 hit. And I don't like it lasting for 12 turns. I'd be happy with the 1 turn or 2 turn Mimic Beacon with 12 health. But the important thing here is it turns off the AI hacks of the Mimic Beacon. That's kind of a big deal. That needs to happen because the base item is so broken. And if we're turning off the hacks, the Skeleton Alien is an alien that is canonically in-universe a thing. I guess that's not true, though, because this would be from XCOM 93, which is now a non-canon, isn't it? The series did get rebooted. But still, like, in my head, this is a part of XCOM. I'm fine with it being here. It's a goofy, weird little grub alien thing riding in a chair. Why not? And the reason this is related to Mimic Beacons is because when you kill them, you get the ability to... you better use the skeleton corpse to build deployable turrets. And that is essentially just a Mimic Beacon by another name without the AI hacks. So yeah, this will just be a way to get upgraded Mimic Beacons essentially as the game goes on, with more health and more utility, as opposed to just being a distraction. And they'll still be a distraction, but there won't be AI hacks, and it'll be a much fairer way to go about things. On the subject of niche items, we never even saw corrosive rounds, but I talked about them from a mathematical standpoint earlier. I consider corrosive rounds to not need to be in the game. I think the reason they were removed from the base game is because mathematically, they're basically just worse than armor-piercing rounds. Like, yes, if we had 100 HP enemies with 10 health, or 10 armor rather, like the Angry Sectopon in the game, corrosive rounds might start having a purpose. But generally speaking, from a damage dealing perspective, corrosive rounds are strictly inferior to just ignoring the armor with AP rounds. It's very hard for the math to justify corrosive rounds, and as a result, I don't like them being in the game. I'm glad the mod exists. I'm sure tons of people love this ammo type and like using it, but as an optimizer, if I'm literally never going to choose to build this ammo type, and I have modded my armory to give me that option, then I shouldn't add this ammo type to my game. Which brings us to frost munitions, and it's not specifically about the bullet here, although it's more about everything. It makes several changes. It changes how shield works. It makes it not work on robots. It changes the frost grenade. It changes frost immunities. And on the whole, my experience has been, I really don't like machines being immune to frost. I don't like it when my sparks ignore frost legion. I don't like it when enemy sparks or things that I don't think of as sparks like specters and codexes ignore my stuff. I don't value frost munitions. I miss the frost bomb. Like, sure, it's overpowered, but I still like it. So on the whole, as a result of not really jiving with any of this stuff, frost munitions, not a mod for me. Not a badly made mod, it just doesn't really line up with anything that I want from my game. Recover fallen hero is a great thing to add to your game. Somebody dies, you go get their corpse. Easy peasy, makes sense. That should be a covert operation, right? It's just a damn shame that, like, you keep getting the mission type for people you don't care about. Because, man, they really wanted me to go get the corpses of people who had nothing. And I'm sure I could edit the INIs and stuff. But honestly, thinking about it, I prefer that this mission doesn't exist from a lore perspective. Why would they just have the corpse with all the gear in a one place available for me to go steal it? And if I can do that, why can't I just go steal Advent technology in general? Why can't I just, like, break in and steal some mag weapons? Additionally, from a mechanics perspective, this removes the tension of needing to get that corpse back. Your guy died, you have to grab him or you lose the serpent suit? Nah, it's fine. We'll get a covert op sometime in the next month. It's not gone forever. We'll have it back eventually. I like that tension is there. So this simultaneously spams the shit out of me with recover fallen hero missions for units I don't want, which I think I could config at it to minimize how much it happens. It would still happen sometimes. So because I find that this mostly just spams me, I don't want to run this. And I also think it adds back the tension, just like removing covert ops adds back the hype for getting superior stuff. This adds back the tension when your guys in good gear actually drops by removing this. And I've been saving this one for last for dramatic effect. I'll be removing the Hive. I originally thought of the Hive as a mod for people who wanted really hardcore enemy mods like Angry Sectopod and Space Egg, and I don't actually agree with that assessment anymore. Because the Hive, on the whole, I don't think is actually that imbalanced. People always mention the same enemy when they complain about the Hive being too hard. It's this one, it's this guy, it's the Chameleon. And I suppose it's the Chameleon Mark II, the Wraith as well. But the Chameleon is a problematic enemy. Typically, I don't mind too much of this stuff. Like the Hive Guard having shield deflect is shitty, but that is exposed to INI and I can reduce it down to 1% like I did for Bio Assaults, so it's not a problem. The main thing is that Hive Warriors hit a bit too hard, mobility is generally a bit high, and again, these are things I can INI edit, throw into my balance mod, fix it, and I would do that, except I don't know how to fix the Chameleon. And if someone wants to make a mod called Chameleon's Not Bullshit Anymore, and make Chameleon stealth mechanics actually functional and fair, then I would be on board with continuing to run the Hive. However, the main issue with the Chameleon is this. If you shoot the Chameleon, it's going to stealth, and sometimes after stealthing, not always, it's going to run away. This makes it very, very hard to kill a Chameleon even once you find it. The biggest issue with this is that since you don't know where it is, you can't use a battle scanner after it stealths. Obviously, this means you should battle scan it first. Fun fact, it still goes into stealth. It's battle scan so you can see where it is, but you're not able to shoot it. You see where it is, it's highlighted in red, and it's invisible, and you can't shoot it. And if you had done it in the other order, if you had found it with a battle scanner, now you'd be able to shoot it. It's just a bug, it's not working correctly. But that bug makes Chameleons go from a thing that could be balanced and is currently very frustrating to a thing that is just wildly out of line. And for me, the absolute nail in the coffin is that Rift Keepers can summon units from the Hive. I don't care if a Rift Keeper summons like a Grenadier or a high-ranking Snake or even a Muton. But when Rift Keepers summon fucking Chameleons, and in my experience, I haven't fought them that much, but like 1 in 4 times they summoned Chameleons when they were using Rift when I fought them. That's so far out of line with everything else the Rift Keeper is pulling. And that's something I can fix, right? I can figure out what encounter list it's pulling from, change the mod, remove the Chameleons from that list. It's fine, I can do it. But I don't want to, because the Chameleons have the stealth bug, where if they've been battle scanned and you shoot them, they still become unshootable. And in general, it feels like they're in stealth too much of the time and too fast. And I think the real nail of the coffin for me is you can't even rely on them to do rational shit. They'll go in stealth and just hang out for multiple turns for no reason. You can throw mimic beacons where they went into stealth over and over and over again. I did this. There was a mission where I threw 3 of them. It never came out as stealth. And then on the 4th turn, I finally found it by running around. It just never attacked. And that's so deeply frustrating. It's not anything else. It's just chameleon stealth mechanics not being well designed that's really preventing me from trying to customize the Hive to my liking. And since I lack the coding ability to get in there and figure out how that shit works, instead, I'm just going to take an axe to it because I'm not personally attached. In fact, I feel like they took up a lot of the campaign, and while I don't mind it, that's mostly the result of the Hive more, which I also obviously won't be running. I think that I'm okay to have a much more reasonable amount of chrysalids in my next campaign that don't have ridiculous stealth mechanics that don't quite work. And I think that's about it for all the changes I'm currently intending to make going into my next campaign. Obviously, I would like to find the cause of why my current campaign's experiencing the performance death spiral, and there's a real chance that the cause is just like, can't be changing mods like that, can't be installing and removing mods mid-campaign, and it sure looks like you can until the performance death spiral hits its peak, and you go from like minor performance loss to is there a conflict 5 FPS nightmare time very quickly. So whenever I do play my next campaign, I'll be playing without Covert Infiltration for a shorter campaign, and even though typically I don't like playing on Commander, I like playing on the highest difficulty, it makes me feel accomplished, I'll probably play on Commander as well, just to ensure I actually get to see the end of the fucking campaign. For now though, that's my thoughts on all the mods I've been playing with, which ones I intend to cut for the next campaign, what settings I intend to change, and how I intend to add new mods. Oh, one more thing though, I forgot this one. I'm going to be playing with Busy Skies on so that we can actually see UFO raids in the next campaign, because the Avenger just never got attacked in my campaign, so I never got to see them, and that makes me very sad. For now though, I'm done. I've been rather coherent. That's been me talking about modding in XCOM 2. You probably shouldn't take my word for it though. I apparently am a terrible source as I've just killed my campaign. But anyways, I had fun with the campaign. I hope you did too. Sad to see it might be ending like this, but oh well.